Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Hugh Freeze, the Auburn Tigers on a historic run on the recruiting trail, flipping four-star athlete Derick Smith from Alabama. Now the Auburn fans who have been rocking with the boys the last couple of days as we've continued to break down these commitments for Auburn know that Derick Smith was the kind of guy that I had my eye on over the weekend for this Auburn program. I think this is one of the more special athletes in this 2025 cycle. And quite frankly, I think the most fascinating conversation to have with Derick Smith is at what position is he going to play at the college football level? It sounded like Alabama more saw him as a defensive back. Now, I'll preface with this. I'm not nearly as smart as a lot of these college football coaches making these decisions. I look at the film for Derick Smith and say, I don't know how you can see this kid as anything other than an offensive playmaker at the college football level. He is special with the football in his hands. I fully expect Auburn to use him on the offensive side of the football. I would love to hear from you guys in the comments section in terms of what position you would like to see Derick Smith at, but you make no mistake about it. This is one of the more special athletes in the 2025 class in a massive commitment for this Auburn program. Really excited to get into the film, some of the more fun film that you'll see in this 2025 cycle. Before we get into it, as always, just want to say thank you to you guys and to the Auburn fans. Over the last couple of days, we've talked a ton of Auburn football on the recruiting trail, and the amount of support you guys have shown the fellas, it's been amazing. I can't thank you guys enough. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into Derick Smith. Now, I want to start before we get into the film with why I think Derick Smith should be playing on the offensive side of the football. And I think you just got to look at the numbers from the junior year at the high school level. This is a guy that caught for over 46 catches, over 1,400 yards, 14 touchdowns, and then had 65 carries for over 1,000 yards, 9 touchdowns. He averaged 15 yards per carry his junior year. At the end of the day, this kid is just special with the football in his hands. And I don't know how you can look at Derick Smith and say, how can you not want to get the football into his hands at the collegiate level? And I think on top of that, what makes us feel really good about this commitment, hey, who's really good at getting their offensive weapons involved? It's Hugh Freeze. I think Hugh Freeze is probably foaming at the mouth in terms of how you're going to want to use a guy like Derick Smith. When I look at the film, he kind of reminds me of Kadarius Toney with the Florida Gators, not the version that we see in the NFL, but at the collegiate level in terms of just special movement skills, in terms of creating separation in his routes. But more importantly, when he has the football in his hands, I mean, he's almost impossible to tackle in space. He has blazing speed, but more importantly, the short area quickness, the ability to make people miss in space. That's what makes Derick Smith so special. So again, I think he could be a very good defensive back at the collegiate level, but I look at Derick Smith and say, how can you not want to get him involved on the offensive side of the football? And, I think he kind of complements what Auburn brought in at the wide receiver position in the 2024 cycle, where you brought in some monsters in terms of boundary wide receivers, guys like Perry Thompson and guys like Cam Coleman. I think Derick Smith would work phenomenally in that kind of offense where, hey, safeties have to respect what Cam Coleman and Perry Thompson are going to do down the field. That's going to open up a lot of space in those short intermediate route trees for a guy like Derick Smith to just make it happen with the football in his hands. You dive into the film. The film's an absolute blast to watch. I mean, you get into it and it's just say he's pretty much impossible for these kids at the high school level to tackle. Just get him the football in space. Let him absolutely go to work. It's phenomenal acceleration. If you take a bad angle on Derick Smith, he's going to just run right by you. But he's the ability to just get in and out and have great feel when the football's in his hands. That's kind of the stuff that you love with Derick Smith. Now, you make no mistake about it. As a defensive back, I think Derick Smith would be very, very good. He's very rangy at the safety spot, comes in, is very physical at the point of attack. This is a guy that he's not going to be hard to get on the football field because he's an elite caliber athlete. But you see what he can do in terms of the football on his I mean, it's silly what he can do. I mean, just how smooth he is. The ability to routinely make people miss at the second level. And again, blazing speed when it's time to turn on the jets. I look at Derick Smith and say, how can you not want to get the football into this kid's hands at the collegiate level? I trust Hugh Freeze. I trust Charles Kelly, those guys to have that conversation of where are we going to best fit and best use Derick Smith. But the way I look at it, I don't see how you can not have this kid on the offensive side of the football in terms of what he can do with the football in his hands. I think this is a special caliber talent. I think more importantly, you look at Auburn in the 2025 cycle, they got some defensive backs that I really like, right? Eric Winters, top 60 national prospect. You go down to Blake Woodby, another cornerback that I really like, along with Donovan Starr. Auburn's filling it up in terms of talented defensive backs. Probably should shout out Devin Williams as well. You look at Auburn in the wide receiver position, this would essentially be their first wide receiver commitment in 2025. Now, we expect the wide receiver class to be a little bit small because you brought in the best wide receiver class in the country in the 2024 cycle. But I look at Derick Smith and say, if you're trying to find a wide receiver in this 2025 cycle, Derick Smith, in my mind, is your guy. And again, it goes back to Derick Smith is a premier talent. You look at Hugh Freeze, he's a premier offensive play caller. Hugh Freeze is going to know what best to use with Derick Smith because, again, you got to dive into the film and say not a ton of polish for Derick Smith as a wide receiver. There's not a ton of routes where he is running clean routes and creating separation down the field. I think all of that will come. He has the movement skills to be a freaky good route runner with a little bit more coaching. But at the end of the day, you want these kind of premier playmakers on the offensive side of the football where just get them the football in space and good things will happen. And again, I really do trust Hugh Freeze to get it done with Derick Smith. And you talk about Auburn, just absolutely on a run on the recruiting trail, recruiting the state of Alabama, flipping two guys from Alabama to Auburn. Talk about what Hugh Freeze is building with Auburn. It is going to be something special. This is kind of the first part. And talk about getting this Auburn program back to where it belongs. When Hugh Freeze took over, we said this Auburn program has the ability to be one of the best programs in the country every single year. But it starts with talent acquisition. It starts with getting these kind of difference makers into this Auburn roster. That is exactly what Hugh Freeze is doing. You're starting to hear some serious buzz about quarterbacks as well in this 2025 cycle, which I'll say, even if Auburn doesn't land a quarterback in 2025, in this era of the transfer portal, I mean, you can go out and address that position, but if you can get a team around the quarterback that's going to be really good, go grab an elite quarterback in the transfer portal. There's going to be plenty in 8 months when the 2024 season ends. But I think Hugh Freeze, in terms of what he's doing, building just a dominant program around the quarterback on the offensive side of the football, getting it done on the defensive side of the football, especially in the front seven, that's where it starts. Hugh Freeze, again, you asked me to buy stock in a program for the next 5 years, it's probably going to be Hugh Freeze and the Auburn Tigers. I think he's doing a phenomenal job building this roster to the point where it's going to be competing for SEC titles year in, year out. Massive commitment for this Auburn program. We'll cut it there. Again, appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.